What is good, ladies and gentlemen? What is good? It is Monday night. So you know what that means. It's a new episode of the Black Baseball Mixtape podcast. We have the entire crew in the building, so we're going to jump right into everything that is happening. But before we do that, we have to thank our amazing sponsors. So shout out to Steelo Sports, the Players Alliance, Rebellion Harvest, and Numbers Game Scorecards. I actually took number game scorecards with me to the Andre Dawson Classic in Vero Beach. It was my first time ever going to the Jackie Robinson training complex, and I scored every game of the Andre Dawson HBCU Classic with a numbers game Black Baseball Mixtape scorecard. So I'm really excited about that. And now we also have an opportunity to introduce our brand new sponsor for the first time, Minority Prospects. You may know them as Minority Baseball Prospects, Minority Softball Prospects. You'll see them on Instagram as Minority Takeover. They are an official sponsor and a wonderful partnership that we will further go into detail with as we go through the season. But you'll see your boy quite a bit working over there as well, writing over there, doing a lot of things. They are the hub of Black baseball and Black softball, especially at the youth level, and the development level, and at the college level. And so where they want to be, I want to be. Black Baseball Mixtape wants to be. Where Black Baseball Mixtape wants to be, they want to be. So welcome to our latest and greatest sponsor, Minority Prospects. We're excited about it. Everybody clap it up for that.
Yes.
That's awesome. And now let's jump into the mess, man. Flobo, how we feeling?
Yeah. I'm doing good. Any in the booth Monday is great to me. New episode drop, part of the Black Baseball Mixtape family. But like you were saying, it is it is a stacked week when it comes to baseball news and notes. So I'm excited to be a part of it.
I'm excited for you. Quickly, before we go into too much further detail, tell us who's on In the Booth this week. It's a brand new episode that just dropped today. You can go subscribe to In the Booth and listen to it right now.
Yeah, every other Monday. Today's episode was with Boogie Gates over there at Baseball Beyond Borders. He's up in the Pacific Northwest, just making sure like kids have a place to play in that area. There's a lot of talent out there, and what Boogie is doing is really getting the youth involved in the game. It's a cool episode. Check it out. You'll enjoy it.
Well, that's awesome. Make sure you subscribe again to In the Booth. Let me jump over to April. She's got the Southern shirt on. Hey, y'all. How you feeling, April?
Hey, y'all. I'm feeling great tonight. So, yeah, I'm ready.
Excellent. Well, look, I got to see Southern play this weekend. You got to see Southern play over at the Cactus Jack. So we'll compare some notes about these HBCU baseball tournaments.
Sure.
But it was, I mean, it's kind of a sad thing because they're over now. They're going to go kind of into their regular week schedules and conference play. So, that kind of 2-week frenzy of all of these college baseball and college softball tournaments are coming to an end. But what an experience it's been. So it's been fantastic. I see my guy over there. You moisturized over there, Butterman Kane.
Butterman Kane.
We try to be. You know, it's been kind of cold. It's been kind of cold lately.
You're right.
But yeah, ready to get into some spring training drama. You know, there's always a new story every week. Last week we were talking about Stroman, but now that's already dead. So you know how times go in baseball. So excited to jump into it tonight.
Well, let's start with that. We'll flip back and talk a little bit about college and the Andre Dawson later, but let's start with storylines out of spring training, players that you're watching, situations that you're watching. We already, like I said last week, we already talked about Marcus Stroman. Now there's all kinds of news coming out. They're playing games now. A lot of excitement over there. Mets camp. Soto's buying players' cars and hitting home runs in the same day. I'm going to go around Robin, and I'm going to let each of you answer what's the kind of the standout storyline that you're watching right now from spring training. I will start with Flobo, but what is the storyline you?
I got to do the 100-pound gorilla in the room first. It's kind of the obvious. It really was the Juan Soto thing. I think the first game of the season or the spring training session, it was like, how is he going to adjust with this team? Is he going to have the same pop on the ball? Had a fantastic moment of happenstance to hit a home run his first plate appearance as a New York Met. And that was pretty cool to see that as a fan. But ultimately, I think to me, from a structural standpoint, maybe because I'm trying to see if I have a chance to visit the Cactus League this year, is how separated the Grapefruit League is from the Cactus League. It's really being really apparent how so many clusters of the Florida ball may impact spring training development, may impact some of the injuries. That's kind of something I'm looking at long term. But definitely the one moment for me was one someone hitting that pop, and I'd be like, have to eat my own crow and be like, I guess he's that bad. I guess he ain't a villain today.
Now, dig into it a little bit, because I don't know what you mean. I don't fully understand.
Yeah,
so tell me a little bit about the separation of the Cactus League and the Grapefruit League.
So this is actually brought up on the SNY broadcast this over the weekends, that because there's basically 3 clusters of where the teams are located in the Grapefruit League. We're talking around like the Port St. Lucie area.
This is Florida. Yeah, this
is Florida, Tampa area, and then like the Naples, I guess that Newport Richie area. Whereas the Cactus League is essentially one city. It's in Arizona. It's like in the valley, and so maybe resources can change, prospects can change, but what happens as far as the schedule is that in the Cactus League, it's a bit more balanced. Whereas if you're developing a team in the Grapefruit League, since you're basically having an unbalanced schedule and playing the same 5 teams or 4 teams, you might not be able to see the best combinations, or you may not be able to test some of the players who would like to in all of an ideal environment. So I was kind of watching that. I didn't realize that until this season, but I think that's something we should look at long term about what that means for teams.
Yeah, so I've been told, and again, I've never been to spring training. I will be going to spring training for the very first time in Florida, West Palm Beach, in not this weekend, but the weekend after. I was told, though, every time leading up to this, Cheats, if you're going to go to spring training, go in Arizona. Don't go in Florida, because if you go in Arizona, everybody's like there. Everything's there. If you go to Florida, it's like, oh, it's 3 hours this way. Like we picked the we intentionally, my family and I intentionally picked the complex that hosts both the Nationals and the Astros. That way we can see, Nats games and Astro games kind of in the same location in a short, like a dense amount of time. But I have been told that Arizona is the best place.
Can I jump in here real quick?
If anybody in the chat knows, what do you prefer, Florida or Arizona for spring training? Let us know in the chat. But that's what I've always heard, is Arizona is the place to go.
Well, I think that the reason why the Mets broadcast team brought it up, it was like, well, that same cluster, that's the Mets, the Astros, the Nationals. It's like there's 3 in-division rivals you're spring training with for a month. You don't really get to, show all your cards on the table. So.
I remember when I visited Arizona and I was taken to the area, and I was like, well, this is amazing that everything is so close together. Like, it's literally right back to back to back to back to back to back to back. So for somebody who's traveling to the area and you want to experience more than one team, you're able to do it because they're literally all right there. And you're able to do it whether you're, walking or if you're driving. It's not that far of a drive. When I say like hop, skip, and a jump, like I really mean that. And I was shocked by how close they all were together. So yeah, I totally get the entire feeling of doing it in Arizona over Florida.
What are some of the things we're looking for? And I'll jump to Malik right now. Malik, what's your storyline? I'll get to April. You'll be next. Malik, what's your spring training storyline that you're looking at?
Right now for spring training, what's really interesting is the AL East and the influx of Black players and Black prospects that are in each team. If we look at the Rays, we got Trey Morgan. He's in spring training camp along with Xavier Isaac. We just saw Chandler Simpson bust out a couple of singles, make a couple of great plays in the outfield. He made a play off of Christian Campbell, another Black prospect, with the Boston Red Sox. And then if you go over to the Orioles, we have a few interesting non-roster invites with Daz Cameron. I think he's still with the team.
Daz is there.
Yep. And then we have Nick Gordon, Jordan Adams. And then we also have Enrique Bradfield Jr., which will probably be Cedric Mullins' replacement. So there's a lot of talent on display. A lot of these guys are getting their feet wet. One thing to notice is that the outfield is a lot harder to play in spring training with that bright sun, especially in the Grapefruit League. And so something to consider when you see these guys making some awesome plays, that it's a little bit harder, especially with starting the season off.
Okay, so we'll get into it even further when we talk about some of the names in particular. But like you said, you're looking in particular about the AL East and some of the teams there. Who are some of I think Christian Campbell's probably the guy, right? The name that you would want to kind of identify as somebody that of that group in the AL East of folks that are going to make the roster or be a breakout black star. Is it Campbell for you?
I think it's Campbell for a lot of folks. It's looking a little difficult with the Red Sox roster situation going on with Alex Bregman and Devers kind of having this timeshare at third, or maybe Bregman might be moving to second. We're not quite sure of how the infield is going to look, but it will be really nice to see Campbell break camp. I think it would incentivize the Red Sox to call him up on opening day for a potential extra draft pick if he wins Rookie of the Year, which he's capable of doing because the AL is, I don't think, not as stacked with prospect-ready players coming into 2025. I know we got Roman Anthony on the same team, but I believe he's going to start the year in AAA. But it would really be good for them to call him up on opening day. Just got to find a spot for him to play at.
And that's the tough part for Christian Campbell right now, right? It's like he's got all the potential in the world. He's really matured as a hitter as well. The question is there room for him on that roster especially when you talk about breaking camp? Because Red Sox have a lot of young, kind of talented players in camp. You mentioned Roman Anthony, but they also have Mayer's there, right? Marcelo is there as well. Christian Campbell's there. These are all infielders, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like trying to figure out where they're going to play is an interesting place. But that's a good one. We'll get back to that because that's going to be another question as we go through this podcast today, because we want to talk about some of the breakout black stars, especially the young ones. I'm going to figure out in my mind, Bradfield probably breaks camp in AA, AAA. Like Enrique probably is not going to be where with the big club this season. Maybe it really depends on how competitive the Orioles are at the trade deadline. And what I mean by that is they didn't extend said. So the question really is, when do they come off of said? If they come off of said, is said going to be a major player down the stretch and a playoff run, then you keep them. But if if the Orioles stumble out of the gates, you're probably looking at somebody that's on the last year of his deal and not extended, and you've got all these young guys coming up in the Orioles farm system. What happens to Cedric Mullins is going to be something that I'm watching really closely all season.
Same here.
April, what say you?
For me, I'm excited to see so many of the young players just balling out. I know you posted about Zaire Hope earlier today.
Another player.
Yes, amazing. I have noticed my Dodgers have lost pretty much every game except for the Padres. That stood out.
Always beat the Padres. Always beat the Padres.
Y'all, I get excited for every single highlight from Chandler Simpson because it's just like, I don't know what I'm going to get whenever the highlight comes, but I'm ready to see exactly what it's going to be. I don't care what the day is. If he's playing, I want to see what's coming from it. That's how I feel right now about spring training. Like all these teams are playing, but I'm really looking for what he's doing next.
He's such an exciting player. I think you're right. There's so many of them. Let's just kick it off as we've now gone through some of the things we're looking at. But let's talk about some of these black breakout players because you mentioned Hope, you mentioned Campbell, Chandler Simpson. Who are some of the players, like you said, when they're playing a spring training game? Because the environment spring training, this may be the only time we get to see them face some of these kind of major league arms early on. Who are some of the black players that you think is must see TV?
I don't want to jump the gun because we're talking about this in our pre-production meeting, but because I am from Brooklyn, I got to get it for Christian Moore, right? Like he's the talk of the town this weekend.
Yes.
I told you a month ago on the chat, I was like, I'm going for the Angels. I believe they're going to be a playoff team. So that was my choice, but I really think there's a lot of stories here because of where he may potentially end up on a team that definitely needs a direction that we can all pitch in here, but definitely was a guy I was looking forward to.
Yeah, Christian Moore is the talk of this week for sure and talk of camp. And again, they're talking on MLB Network and really credible journalists are saying he has a chance to break camp. We do got to remember Christian Moore is a mature player in the sense that he played in the College World Series just last year. That's where he really made his money to get in that first round, was the performance that he had in Omaha with the eventual national champion Tennessee Volunteers, right? So but he's an older player. He's a more like mature, developed player than some of the guys that maybe coming out of high school. He's got all the tools. He's got all the physical gifts. Again, he played at the highest level. I think he should be one of those guys, man. The Angels are interesting because they do have Christian Moore. They have Tim Anderson, which we always talk about on every episode. So let me do that now. We got the TA watch.
Yeah.
There's another guy. There's another guy though. There's another guy, Malik, that maybe been flying under the radar, but he can't if he keeps playing this way. Paris can't.
Paris.
He is dominating spring training right now. He's doing a really good job at spring training. So he's another middle infield player that could potentially play. There could be a scenario where you have Christian Moore at second and Paris at short for the Angels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Actually, with Neto, he might be out for a month. That's what I'm reading. It's a very complicated injury. You know how the Angels go. I know I'm going to say they need to be investigated for their training staff and all that. But it would be really nice to see
Rendon.
Yeah, like how's Rendon doing? How's Trout
Shout out to the Rendon and the trainers.
Yeah, you're onto something, Malik, for real. That's what goal is when you cut corners when poor teams or poverty teams have problems. It's usually the training booth, the physios,
Something's going on, but it would be nice to see Christian Moore at second, maybe TA at shortstop, get him maybe a month run. We just got to have to see how he does in spring training. I don't think he's had any hits. Need to check his stat cards again, but hopefully he gets his feet wet and actually takes a spot on the team, whether it's third, second, outfield. We're not sure where he's going to play.
That was the thing. The last time I checked, TA hadn't gotten he's gotten some at bats, but he hasn't got his first hits yet. And again, like you said, Christian Moore and Paris are over there raking.
Right. And another thing about Christian, because I got a chance to watch him during, because he's an SEC player, and with him playing in the College World Series, like he was a very mature player, but Tennessee over there, they were able to help to develop him even more. And the SEC, I know a lot of people tend to focus on them for football, but the SEC is very competitive in baseball.
It's the best baseball conference in America.
It is.
It really is. It's the best Division I baseball conference in America.
Yes, and we're talking about like literally top to bottom. So teams that you don't give a second look at in football, you got Vandy and all these other teams who tend to keep programs at a high level. And the fact that you're rotating them in and out, they have the possibility and the opportunity to be able to prepare themselves for what he is doing right now. So that moment he's already faced his greatest moment, and he's won a national championship. And now he's on display doing it with the opportunity to become a starter for the Angels, which I do think that he's going to make the opening day roster. That's a strong take. I'm going to stand.
So we should mark that. That's a strong take. Do we know how old Christian Moore is? Hold on. Christian Moore is 22 years old.
Yeah, I was going to say 22, 23.
So he's 22 years old. Do we think Christian Moore breaks camp with the big club? I'm going to – look, where's Malik? Malik's the expert at this. Malik, what do you think?
So the Angels, the reason why Kyron Paris is on the roster, not only because that 2020, everybody was getting called up, but the Angels call people up very quickly. I think right now they're actually testing Christian Moore at third and at camp. And so they're trying to make him a little bit more versatile to take Rendon's spot potentially, just in case, Renjifo's better at second. I think he's capable of playing multiple positions outside of just second base. With knowing the Angels in their history, I think he has a shot to break camp, like by far, out of even more so than Christian Campbell, his counterpart over there in Boston.
And I will also say, if he doesn't make camp, he's starting this year. So you don't have to he's not making, he will be starting this year.
My question is, so are we overlooking Kyron Paris? Paris is 23 years old. He's a shortstop. He's been up before. He was up last year. I'm the guy thinking more so than Moore. Paris is the guy that may break camp with the big club.
I think he could. He has a lot more experience under his belt, and that goes a long way. Even if you are not the best player, you have, big league experience. You've seen big league pitching, which Moore is just now kind of seeing. So I have to give you, your credit there. Kyron could be, the guy that's the safer floor option right now, and give Moore some at bats in Utah. He's gonna mash in Utah. That's just, we all know that because the ball flies there. So we'll see. I think Kyron has a shot too.
The interesting thing about Paris versus Moore, like you said, the age difference is only 1 year. It's a 23, 22. However, we talk a lot about this when we talk about development and players and kind of what happens. Moore went to college, obviously played, like we were just saying, played at a high level there. Paris went drafted, I want to say, out of high school, and he went in the second round. Mm-hmm. So he went second round out of high school. So his major league clock starts a little bit earlier. The clubs seem to have, a long leash with first. He's a second round pick. Paris was. Mm-hmm. So he probably got a signing bonus. They've got investment in him. And like I said, he got 51 at bats in the MLB last year. I'm just interested to see how this will be a really good case study, honestly, about kind of who breaks camp this year, how the club views. Moore is an amazing player. So is Paris, had a ton of potential. But we're always talking about the path to get to the big leagues, whether it's the high school path or the college path. This is an interesting one because they're both really talented players. And I think maybe because of just the exposure of Omaha and, all the stuff that happened with Christian Moore, I think Moore is on more people's radars than Paris is right now.
I would say that based on the franchise itself, like if these two players were in the Yankees organization, we ain't going to see them to 2029. You know what I mean? The Angels have two things going for them. One, they need a buzz, right? They really haven't had any kind of that magic. And two, that tendency to call people up. I mean, Sean Noel was like a documentary subject of how green he was when he got the call. So I think the answer is going to be why not both, especially if the Angels don't start off hot the way they do. But, I think there's some value to having someone that has people outside of your organization circle talking about your team, whether that's good or bad or maybe too much too quickly. You got to make a move on someone who has a hot hand.
No, I agree 100% because it's right. What do the Angels really have going?
Right. Playoff, y'all.
Christian Moore might be the most marketable Angel we're talking about.
I'll buy a jersey. Yo, clip that. I will buy a jersey because he breaks camp.
So,
oh man! And look, here's the thing too. I was like, this may be completely off topic. Forgive me, and look, forgive me too. April, forgive me in advance because April's the only women in this group here talking about it. But like Christian Moore in Paris and those guys, they're marketable, very attractive players. Like there are thirst bucket websites following around Christian Moore. Again, it doesn't hurt that he played at Tennessee. So obviously there's a lot of notoriety with that program as well. But these are people that are not hard to look at, and I do think that that helps for marketing purposes, right?
Yes, it does. It does help a lot.
I think that's the biggest money left on the table thing for Los Angeles Angels. And that is maybe you can't change the name back to Anaheim or what have you, but you can't touch the Dodgers in prestige, right? You can't touch them in superstar talent. I would go the opposite. I would lean into the boys next door. I would lean into the small communities and local towns. I would lean into things like that. I mean, I know it's very small town tactic, but at least make it your own to people living in Riverside, Oceanside, and Orange County, instead of trying to be Dodgers too when you're clearly not. So yes, there's buckets for everybody. You know what I'm saying? Lean in.
That's how it's worked out for Jalen Hurts. Y'all already know, but I mean, they got these men acting a doggone fool on the sports channel. He's pretty and all this other stuff. Like we know, we all have eyes, we all can see. But y'all, the way y'all lose y'all mind over Jalen Hurts too. Oh my God!
I'm saying those it factors. There's a lot of young players that are coming up now that have those it factors. And yeah, that's a good example, April. I think Christian Moore has the potential to have a Jalen Hurts type effect if they put that smile on a lot of billboards.
Yeah.
What are some of the other? I will tell you, and this may be a little bit more kind of experienced storylines, but you're starting to see a little of them. Lawrence Butler, somebody already put it in the chat. I definitely want to see what Lawrence Butler continues to do. He's already hit a home run this spring training. But I think that we were talking about this a lot over the weekend with the people I was watching the Andre Dawson Classic with, and people are just following Black baseball closely. The Lawrence Butler has so much attention on him now. He has so many eyes on him. He is extremely, as we talked about, he is extremely marketable as well.
He is.
And the Athletics are marketing him. They're putting Butler on a lot of things. And the issue is he had a great kind of that last quarter of the season was unreal, and he gets everything that he deserves. But Law is down in the top 100 MLB players right now, and he's again a marketing kind of engine for the Athletics as well. He's one of those guys, Brett Rooker and all this. He's one of those guys that you're penciling in the lineup for the Athletics. They're leading him off. He's the leadoff hitter for the Athletics lineup right now. He's got a lot of talent, a lot of potential. I'm watching him closely because I'm wondering how he handles all of the stuff that has to do with not being on the field. I think last year Lawrence Butler had a lot of fun. He's the fun-loving guy and doing a lot of fun stuff and going to a lot of places and doing a lot of things. And then he started going on a tear. And to bring in another sport, it kind of reminds me of like where everybody saw Anthony Edwards was last year in regards to just like Anthony Edwards being like, he's the future. Now you turn into like, and he knows it, but like now the future is now. And you've got to start, keeping up to the hype, if you will. I don't question that Law has the ability to do it. I'm just wondering how you handle all of that. And so far, so good in spring training. He's hitting. He hit a home run already. But one of the things I want to watch, especially not just spring training, but the early part of this season, is how does Lawrence Butler respond to this emerging kind of star that he's becoming?
I think that's important. And I also think it's important to see exactly how he, with this team, adjusts to the new surroundings that they're going to have. Because
probably better. Like, to be honest with you, it's probably better to be out of Oakland.
No, yeah, maybe. But I think
what's that?
But I meant like with all eyes, like everybody's going to be watching. Oh, what is it going to be like for them to be in Sacramento? Are they we were talking about this a couple of weekends ago. Are they the Sacramento A's? Are the whatever other team? So eyes are already on them just for that particular reason. So
they are just the Athletics. But that's what they're called. They're just the Athletics. Yeah. But it also, and you guys will understand why I say this, and obviously everybody at the mixtape, we're rooting for him to be as successful as possible. But there was a lot of talk over the weekend about, 2 years ago, this is where everybody's talking about Jordan Walker. And so where are we now with Jordan Walker versus like Lawrence Butler? So it was an interesting thing because I really do feel like 2 years ago, everybody was like, Jordan Walker. No, Jordan Walker did not have the productivity level that Butler had at the end of last season. So we've actually never seen Walker on a tear like Butler was on. But it can get in your head, man. Baseball is one of those things where it's an emotional roller coaster. And so how do you turn out to be more like Lawrence of last year as opposed to where Jordan Walker is, right? And so speaking of which, Malik, what do we expect? Do we expect anything what do we expect out of Jordan Walker this year?
I expect the world out of Jordan Walker. Here's the reason why. I think we have to really look deep into Jordan Walker's like statistics. He actually did pretty well when he was up with the team. I think that the up and down situation that the St. Louis Cardinals were giving him, sending him down to Memphis, bringing him back up. He was on a hitting streak when he first came up with the team and they sent him down. I think the up and down really messed with his head and his confidence as a player. He actually has shown a lot of adjustments in his last, plate appearances, less chasing at sliders and outside pitches. These are the little things that I think that Jordan Walker has learned in AAA and at the major league level. If we're kind of comparing to Lawrence Butler's situation, I truly think Law is going to actually be able to play with not a lot of, bright lights on him, because Oakland as a team historically has always been kind of a team's team where there's several, guys that get together and make up like a star. Whereas on most teams, you have like one guy that the team kind of circles, whereas the A's have historically been just like a conglomerate of just scrappy guys. And so I think Law's going to handle the pressure well. I hope he gets an extension so he can get a little money out of it, and maybe they'd be incentivized to trade him because they don't want to pay him. But with Jordan Walker, I just think that if he gets enough at-bats, he gets at least 500 at-bats this season consistently. He's going to play right field every day. He's not going to have anyone blocking him there. He's going to be just fine. He just needs to be able to play consistently. That's all.
Yeah, the franchise is the difference there, Cheats, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's the amount of press covering that game.
Mm-hmm.
There's the fact that the athletics organization needs any kind of goodwill they can muster. So if everyone's writing them up in a good light, they're going to have a longer leash. Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem like a team like St. Louis where there's an expectation to win. I think the Athletics will win. I mean, the AL West is kind of like the Wild West, right? It's kind of like an open division right now, but it's like St. Louis where people are like, no, we're supposed to be here. You're not doing it now. So like, I think there's a lot of places for him to excel. He has to put the hits on, he has to show up, but I do think there'll be a lot more grace given the environment in Western Sacramento the team is playing out of.
That's interesting. I mean, I obviously expect big things out of Walker this year as well. I think in many ways, right, the spotlight that they put on Walker helped Mason Wynn be able to kind of be able to work every day diligently, and now become, obviously, like we're saying, one of the top 100 MLB players right now is Mason Wynn, not Jordan Walker. But I think it helped that, a lot of that kind of hype, if you will, was around Walker. I don't know if Law is going to have that level of cover in Oakland and with the Athletics, excuse me. So I think a lot of eyes are going to be on him earlier. And I think any of the guys that are on that team, they're going to look at, 2 or 3 of those guys to be the dudes. I think I think we focus a lot on Butler because he has the most potential to be just a breakout star in our community. And so it'll be interesting to see. April, what any other play? I know you mentioned Chandler earlier and some other folks. Are there any other like player storylines that you're looking at for spring training? Obviously, we talked a little bit about TA who has not gotten a hit, but
I'm still praying for him, y'all. Outside of that, I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I've been more on the college side, so those have been my main focuses of the spring training so far. I plan on watching a little bit more this week to pick up from that. But yeah, those were my.
You guys you talked about Zaire Hope a little bit as well. That's exciting. And Dustin May returned. I think that was a big news in Dodger world.
Yeah.
Who?
Dustin May returned.
Oh, yes.
Returning. He keeps coming back.
Now, last week we talked about players who should move to other places. I have been telling one of my friends, I'm like, I want to see him as a reliever because it seems like the starting position may be too much for his arm. Like he throws at such a high velocity, but I think that he would be perfect for the reliever spot. And we've seen exactly where we are as far as starting pitchers. I would not be surprised if they move him to that particular spot, especially with them letting Ryan Brazier go, who had like a 1.8 ERA. So, and I was also excited to see him have his moment because he hasn't had a strikeout since 2023. So yeah. And I did see Kershaw is out for the first 60 days. So
60-day deal.
Of course,
60-day DL. Again, I didn't know this, but they put Josiah Gray on the 60-day DL too, and I was a little sad to hear.
Well, that, so. Yeah, he's still recovering.
Yeah,
I'm on the 60-day DL. He one of mine that I'm rooting for. So
So there's three players, and I'll you guys can weigh in on kind of their landscape, or if you're looking at them or watching them. The three players that I'm interested to see come back, and so I'm watching them in spring training to see if they have that comeback kind of ability to be really, really good players. One of the players, the first player I'm going to mention, is a player that fell out. I didn't really put him on the radar until I realized he fell out of the top 100 players right now, and has the ability, I guess, to be a really good player in my mind, and that's J.P. Crawford.
Oh wow, was that the 100?
J.P. Crawford was not on the best, 100 best MLB players right now. And I looked, there's two players that fell off the list, black players that fell off the list from last year, and it was J.P. Crawford and George Springer. They both fell off the list. And then Byron Buxton made a return. But I was interested to see, because Crawford seems to be in camp, seems to be healthy, and seems to be doing well early on in camp. And I'm like, I'm guilty of this as well. I think I'm honestly forgotten how good J.P. Crawford is. And maybe it's because of where he plays. I don't know the exposure of it. But I was like kind of excited to see, okay, what's this guy doing? And he seems to be a guy that could be back in the top echelons of Major League Baseball players. And so I didn't really follow closely, or maybe as closely as I should have. Was Crawford injured most of last year? I don't know.
He was playing a little hurt, and I think Crawford's best skill is his bat to ball, like his bat to ball skills and his eye. When we think of J.P. Crawford's offensive game, it's about like strikeouts and bases on ball being like very even, if not like more walks than strikeouts. And I think last year, a lot of the players in Seattle commented on this, and T.A. Oscar has said this too. Something going on with that batting guy in like T-Mobile. And so I think that might be messing with his game. He also was playing hurt as well, and he was also on the IL for some time. He's on an extension, so there's I don't think they're gonna, do anything with his contract. He's a leader on the team, but I think that this year, hopefully, much more healthy, he'll be able to, make some adjustments. But I think also he might also be pressing as well, because you see how Julio has done it a little bit throughout the season, trying to be that guy, in Seattle, trying to go yard because no one else is hitting, everyone is striking out. So hopefully JP plays within his game and just watches the zone a little better, and he just becomes the player that we know that he can be.
I was actually wondering that too, because for me, the entire Seattle team was not batting well. It was really bad, to the point where I was wondering, do they need a new hitting coach? There are obviously some changes that need to happen for them to be so low on the mark in regards to their hitting. So maybe we do see a bounce back and a swing back this year with him, especially in regards to that. But that was a whole team aspect where it had just completely diminished.
Yeah,
apparently it's harder to pitch. It's harder to hit in I think it's easier to pitch in Seattle than it is to hit in Colorado. That's what I read.
Yeah, he was down to 105 games last year, which is the least amount of games he's played since the COVID 2020 season. Like he usually plays a lot more games than he played last year, and last year he batted .202. So even like you were saying, Malik, some of the games that I'm sure he played in that he was quote unquote on the roster back, he wasn't as healthy as he needed to be. But he's a really good player, and had been a good player for the last couple of years. And last year he struggled. So I'm interested to see where Crawford comes back to, because he's one of the guys that I don't think it's a situation like some of the other players where it's like he has to make this. Like you said, he got the extension,
right?
So it's not like he has to do this right now per se. But I think he probably wants to get back sooner than later. Right. Another player I am watching that I really do think is make or break, like it may be make or break for the first half of the season, is Tristan McKenzie.
Yeah,
I think that this is a make or break, because he's got to get healthy. He's got to be on the mound, and he's got to show the potential and flashes that he showed previous to kind of the injuries and the setbacks. I think this is a make or break year for Tristan McKenzie, who did pitch in spring training already. He got one start, went 2 innings, gave up a home run, and got 1 strikeout. So in spring training, you're looking at different things. You're looking at, does he, is the mechanics good? Is the velo there? But Tristan McKenzie, I think, has to have a really good spring.
So let me ask a question, because I agree with you. But let's say for whatever reason, McKenzie does not rise to the occasion. What does that mean for him? Is it like being shipped off to a less competitive team, you're thinking, or like saying thanks for coming, AAA's that way? Like how make or break are we talking?
I think it's pretty difficult. Tristan McKenzie's 27 years old, and he spent the part of the time. Well, I mean, let's just call it what it is. The critical time of last season, Cleveland's in the playoffs. They sent him down to AAA. Mm-hmm. That's where Tristan McKenzie was, where the Guardians were in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. He was in AAA. Right. So, and this is not someone, given the service time and the history that McKenzie has had, is not someone that you expect to be in AAA. You expect him to be a top man in your rotation. Right. So I think he goes the way. What's the guy for the Blue Jays? If this don't work out, he goes the way Manoah? Of like Alex Manoah. Yeah. I think it's going to be that start.
Okay. Also, Brooklyn in the house.
I have to agree. Think about, like, I feel like Cleveland is tough. They have one of the best pitching factories, but they're pretty tough on some pitchers, even if they have success. Remember Zach Plesac? He was a pitcher that they had, and he was a dog for them. They've non-rostered him, and they sent him to AAA. It's a pretty tough crowd, and it's almost like a "what have you done for me lately" crowd there. From what I've known, just watching the Cleveland staff, but I think they believe in him. His velo is up to 95 consistently right now, so I think as long as his peripherals stay good, he has a chance to at least.
Which is wild, because you think small market town, quote unquote, like the Central, they'll be a lot more lenient, but no, they're vicious out there in Cleveland.
And I mean, and to his, like, look, I think he's working to get everything back working the way he wants to do it. I'm a big fan of Tristan McKenzie. I just know, I feel in my heart of hearts that he's got to make it happen this season. Mm-hmm. Last one, well, and before we switch gears, last one that I want to really see again if they come back, because if this team in general comes back and this team gets healthy, they're going to be in the World Series hunt again. But Michael Harris. Money.
Yeah.
I gotta see what you can get out of Michael Harris this year, and I think it's gonna be a lot. I'm very high on Michael Harris this year as well. But I think he's gonna have a monster year. But
you think it's a comeback?
Yeah, I think I mean, Harris isn't like dipped in performance.
I think he's pretty good.
I don't think it's it.
I feel like it's like he could be better, but I feel like he kind of middled out. I don't know if he just like dropped off the face of the earth, but like he could be better. But I don't know. He's kind of like Cedric Mullins to me right now, and he could reach like another level. But you feel like he's kind of fallen off a little bit from people's like radar a little bit.
If you were asking me personally, I think there was super potential, and he became like a nice hand. Now, granted, the Braves didn't have a good season last season by their standards.
Right.
Last season.
Right. And it wasn't healthy. Like, there were some health issues, right?
Yeah, but I bet like if you're Michael Harris and you are just a guy, when 2 years ago they're like, oh man, you got robbed that lame contract because you were a superstar in the making. I think that's what they mean by a comeback.
I see. To become the guy. Yeah. Okay, because I feel like he's kind of a piece. It's almost like I don't want too much of him. Yeah.
Hold on. I just want to make sure I fully understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're saying that you think kind of no. Butterman Kane here is saying he kind of thinks Harris is who he is. Like what we saw out of Harris last season is what.
I think that this was like his floor, like his base floor. Michael Harris, he's like 23, 22.
Yeah, Harris is young.
Playing center field in Atlanta, very 23. Young. It's like if you can get a 3-WAR season, out of Michael Harris like he did the past 2 seasons, I feel like that's kind of a win. I mean, in my books, you got a guy who can play adequate center field in Atlanta. Will give you above average defense, but if you can get that, 5, 6, 7 win MVP candidate, Michael Harris, I think that's like the ceiling. I feel like he's kind of showed us the floor.
That you think the rookie of the year, WAR was 5.2. Michael Harris played 114 games. He was rookie of the year.
He did, and that's a lot.
He batted 297, 19 home runs. Are you telling me that's the pinnacle of a Michael Harris? Like that is what you're telling me. That's the top of Michael Harris.
I would say that could be his average. That could be his good average, meaning like he's gonna have some seasons that are better than that because he was that's his young body. When he gets into that 28, 29-year-old, 30-year-old muscle,
young body Mike.
he's gonna get some jacks. I mean, like I just feel like he showed us a lot that year. We're expecting a lot out of him because he showed us so much that first year. And I think like if Atlanta gives him a little bit of, if we give him a little time to get through that extension, he's gonna show us more. But I just feel like he didn't bottom out too bad as much as some other players that we could talk about.
I can't wait till we get to this whole NL East thing because I already know y'all about to flood my DMs with what I got to say about the Braves, but I'm gonna let y'all have this moment right now.
Whoa, what was that mean? You're detracting.
You know they got a lot of Braves fans in the
oh yeah, I know
in the group,
you're
and yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that.
Please don't. I wouldn't come at them.
And in terms of what you were saying, Malik, as well. So let's just quickly, at 21 years old, Michael Harris had, like you said, a 5.2 WAR season in the sense that he batted 297. He had 19 home runs, 20 stolen bases, and was rookie of the year. In 23, Michael Harris is 22 years old. He plays in more games. He played in 138 games. He had a 293 batting average, so he only fell off a couple points. He actually hit 18 home runs. That was only one less than that year. Still 20 stolen bases. Then you go to, again, last year where he wasn't healthy. Oh, I'm sorry. Very important to say, though, in that 2023 season at 22 years old, numbers were pretty much the same, but the WAR drops from 5.2 to 3.4.
Yeah.
So then,
which is kind of
right. Yeah. So last year, now and again, he only played in 110 games. That's less than he played in the previous two seasons. His batting average went down to 264. Still had some pop, hit 16 home runs. But I think that 297 5 WAR Harris is the Harris that's going to be the Harris, and maybe even better. So based off of last year, this would be, to me, a Michael Harris comeback season.
Yeah, I guess that's pretty true. He's shown us more, so he's gonna have to give us more. So you can't show us that you can hit 20 and still 20 and then take a step back. I just see that he's just so young. Once he get that 25, 26-year-old, prime, Michael Harris, cornbread, Atlanta muscle, you're gonna see probably some 30 home run seasons out of him.
One of the best defensive center fielders in the game. Like his defense is still one of the best in the game. So it's like. I mean, not still. I mean, he's just getting started. He's just getting started, but he's started and getting established. And I think this year is one. So the guys I'm looking at in camp, I want to see if Harris is healthy in camp. I want to see what McKenzie's doing in camp. I want to see what Crawford does. I want to see what Butler does. And obviously a lot of the young guys. There's just a lot of things to talk about. Before we fully switch gears off of spring training, do we want to talk about the Yankees? Or do we want to save it for another podcast?
Last time I talked about the Yankees,
April. I'm
policies.
only going to let April talk about this. April, they changed the beard facial rule. They're changing Frank Sinatra playing. What's happening with what's is it big deal, no deal? Again, the Yankees, everything's overly inflated, but the changes about Frank Sinatra and the facial hair, big deal, little deal, no deal at all?
I think it's a big deal because it's been a tradition for such a long time And for them to finally just decide, like, okay, we're going to make this change at this point in time. There have been players who have also talked about, I know people are always talking about a particular thing, but there have been some players who have discussed why they didn't go because of that particular policy. I was actually watching some saying they liked the policy because they felt that it encouraged discipline, whatever that means, and other things. So I listen. We know
that means, she says.
Right, because discipline does not lead to multiple errors, that fateful fifth inning, and other things. But I think it's good that they are embracing change, because we are not the same. They're not the same team from 20, 30 years ago. Players aren't the same people from 20, 30 years ago. And I don't really think that it has a lot to do with what they do on the field. So if it means that it's going to give players a sense of comfort to be able to be themselves before they even perform, then why not do it?
I feel you. Anybody else want to weigh in on this quickly? I have no opinions on this. I mean, good for Devin. Good for Devin Williams. Devin Williams used to wear a groomed beard. Good for Devin Williams.
No, I know, right? Look, I would, at first reaction I heard, I wanted to pile on. Like, see, finally, right? I would say, look, the Yankees traditions, and I say that loosely because the tradition is really one guy being like, shave, and that was it. Like, it wasn't a decree. It wasn't like there was no tablets from Moses. Right. It was just a guy being like, I hate beards. Let's do it. So I was kind of happy at first. I was like, you know what? The problem with the Yankees organization is that these traditions, for tradition's sake, is really cutting them away from the new generation of players. But it didn't matter if you're getting championships. But now you're not. And so players are going, well, I'd rather go somewhere else where I can be myself and do it. Same with the workforce, same with the military. Like, you look at, like, in the Air Force, they allow a lot more body shapes in hair now they did 30 years ago. But at the same time, though, in small defense, my only defense of the New York Yankees organization, it did seem very reactionary, right? One of the people that was the GOATs of last season, or not the GOATs, one of the one that gone was Aaron Boone. You extend them. And then 24 hours later, you're like, but you know what? You can have a beard now, y'all. To me, it's kind of suspect, isn't it? And then the Frank Sinatra thing kind of came after that. So I understand if you're a fan going, okay, you keep the guy that we want gone, but now you're giving us this instead. This feels like an uneven exchange.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a culture war going on in New York right now. And I think that this would have never happened if Soto went with the Yankees.
No, he's right. I'm glad he said it, though. I'm glad he said it, because they're going to say Mets fan. I'm glad he said it. It's true. Go ahead.
That's a new angle.
It's true. No, that's the angle.
I hadn't heard this before. So you're saying the beard thing would have never happened if Soto stays?
Correct.
If the beard thing would have never happened if Soto stayed, and this has been brewing for a very long time. It's almost like reading a comic book. You know, when you have the part before the Infinity War and you see the war and now it's over. When Soto signed with the Mets for $5 million more, really by the margins, it just set off a chain of events. You have a lot of fans, a lot of young fans, the new nerdy fans like me, you know, our generation, we're watching, you know, exit velocity and all these little things and overanalyzing the game, but we also like to have fun too. You see it with just like the vibes that the Mets brought in comparison to the Yankees. You have, oh my God, you got Grimace. You got the hot tour girl throwing the ball. You got all the memes at the game. I think the Mets are just right now culturally in New York are trying to ride this wave that it's actually really attractive to young fans, new fans, mainstream fans. And the Yankees, they've been part of the course, you know, kind of playing this traditionalist, narrative. We can speak on that all day. But at the end of the day, I think that it's a big cultural war. And if Soto were to stay with the Yankees, they would have probably kept that policy.
I'm so glad, because I believe you 100%. Because I think Soto, like I said last on the chain this week, I said WPIX, for those who don't know, is our superstation, Channel 11. We beam local New York stuff to the Dominican Republic. The Yankees are the Republica's team, right? Dominicans want to be Yankees. You had the son of the República Dominicana standing in right field, getting roll calls every day, being like, I'm done with this. That's a problem. This should have been a dream job for him. And he's going, I don't know. I'm going to go across the street. Not even to Boston. Across the street, bruh. I would be mad too if I was a Yankee.
Now, I want to ask this too, because we didn't really touch on the New York thing. I've never been in Yankee Stadium, but how big of a deal was it for them to change that particular song to something more modern? Because I'm wondering, as a fan, when they play certain songs, whenever you're in a stadium, it just leads to a certain reaction. I do wonder if people feel more away even about the song change than the hair change.
I think the hair's the bigger deal.
Yeah,
I think because again they're still playing. They're not playing it after losses, right? That was the change.
Yeah,
and a lot of folks were saying they shouldn't.
I think they're playing that.
Yeah, but they were saying a lot of folks were saying they shouldn't play it after losses anyway, right? You know what I mean? It was like I kind of feel like they still play it after the wins. They change the song or rotate some songs, after the loss. I think in my mind, I think the facial thing is a bigger deal simply because I don't think anybody decides to come or not come to the Yankees based off of the song stuff. But I do think, like you're saying, people decide, they make free agent decisions based off of, some of the kind of policies of the Yankees. And this was a big one.
Yeah. So not just from Jersey, by the way. Just saying.
Fellas, leave the beard.
He is. He's from Jersey. Tony Bennett's from Brooklyn.
On, fellas. Stop cutting them off, Yankees. We're trying to attract all fans. Leave the beards on.
Yeah.
Well,
leave them on.
Look, once again, before we change segments, let me thank our sponsors again: Steelo Sports, Players Alliance, Numbers Game Scorecards, Rebellion Harvest, Minority Prospects. We also have an announcement. If you're listening now and you want to join the illustrious Black Baseball Mixtape Fantasy Baseball League, if you want to join our fantasy baseball, you're in. Flo, what are you talking about?
No, because I crashed out too hard last season. I was top of my division, and I missed the playoffs, man. I can't do this again.
Come on, Flo, jump back in.
I didn't make the playoffs last year, so I'm just telling you. If you want to join our fantasy baseball league with a bunch of active, like-minded Black baseball fans, you do have to join the Discord. The information is going to be in the Discord. Shout out to Commissioner Said. He is the commissioner of our Black Baseball Mixtape Fantasy Baseball League. We have the draft live. You can log on and talk with us during the draft. It's a lot of fun. Right, Flobo? It's a lot of fun.
When you're winning, yeah, it's great.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
Malik will tell you. It's a lot. But in order for you to play in the Black Baseball Mixtape Fantasy Baseball League, you do have to join our Discord, which is absolutely free. It's a Discord account. We talk Black baseball in there every day. We talk a whole bunch of other stuff as well. The information for fantasy baseball will be in the Discord. So join. Let's have fun. Getting ready for another season. The information will be out there. There might even be 2 leagues based on experience level. Commissioner Said has a whole bunch of ideas. So
I was the first half-season champion. That's all that matters.
I talked to him today, and they have a lot of ideas. And depending on how many people want to play fantasy baseball with us, we'll see how many leagues we have and skill levels and all of that. So very exciting. Now let's switch gears. April, you said you've been following college a lot. I've been following college a lot as well. I made my first trip over the weekend to Vero Beach, the Jackie Robinson complex. It was the first time I'd ever been there. I got to tour. I got to steal a little bit of Flobo's thunder. I got to take a tour. I toured historic Dogertaown. That's where they built Dogertown in 1948, and it was built specifically for the Dodgers to have integrated spring trainings and a place where Jackie Robinson and the other Black players on the Dodgers felt comfortable. Obviously, there's a lot of history with Vero Beach and so on and so forth. I was able to do that. I was able to watch the Andre Dawson Classic, spend some time with the Hawk himself, and it was 8 teams, 7 SWAC teams, and Coach Kerrick Jackson's Missouri program out of the SEC. It was an amazing experience, a lot of fun. Say what you will about Florida. I wouldn't necessarily choose to go there, but there's something about 70-degree and sunny weather for 3 days in a row where you get to watch baseball all day. Where by the end you're like, I kind of get it. I kind of get it. But no, I had a blast. I think the biggest takeaways from the actual play on the field was that the SWAC is a legitimate conference that has a lot to offer, and Alabama State ran off 3 games and put their foot on Missouri as well. And again, Kerry Jackson's going to grow that program. It's going to be a winning program, but Alabama State went into that particular set of games. It's not a tournament, but they went into that particular set of games not playing their best baseball, and they got right well. Jackson State also looked really good. Missouri, again, kind of went in there thinking these were going to be some opportunities to get some get right. Now, they've got some health challenges. They had the flu bug go through their entire team, but their first game, they played the first game Friday night against Florida A&M, which is kind of the de facto host of the Andre Dawson Classic because Andre Dawson is an alumni of Florida A&M. So, everybody's kind of looking at what the Rattlers are going to do. And they played the first night game, and it was, I think, a 6-5 game. Missouri won the game, but it was close. And then the next day, Missouri plays Alabama State and loses pretty bad. They won their last game. I think Missouri left the Andre Dawson Classic with a 2-1 record. But I talked to Coach Jackson after the last game win, and he was like, look, our team learned a lesson over these 3 days about where they think they are and where they actually are. And there's a lot of teams like that. Jackson State is a team that I think they're still learning who they are, but they're actually better than a lot of people think. And Coach Vasquez will tell you with Alabama State, they knew they had a good team. They just had to put it together, and they put it together for the 3 days. So it was a great environment, great crowd, a lot of HBCU feel there, a lot of HBCU teams there. But it was just a wonderful experience. So shout out to everyone at MLB Develops, everyone at the Jackie Robinson Complex. Shout out to my family now, our partners and Minority Prospects. They were all, everybody was there. MLB Network was there. My homie Clinton Yates was there from ESPN. So but it was just a really good set of games for 3 days. And I think you learned a little bit about HBCU baseball and the SWAC. So I'm interested to know how it differed from Cactus. I've been to both of them now, but I was at Cactus Jack last year. I wasn't at Cactus Jack this year, but I'll be interested to compare and contrast some of the HBCU tournament feels between the Cactus Jack and the Andre Dawson. I think the biggest thing was weather and warm.
Yes.
It was 70. It was 70s outside, and it was
and no rain for you.
No rain at all. So, but yeah, it was a great experience. Again, I can take my hats off, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about HBCU baseball.
Do people from around the community? I'm sorry, I cut you off there, April.
I'm sorry. Did they travel? Was there a big travel thing going on? Like, did a lot of people travel to the tournament there?
So the crowd, honestly, if I was comparing the crowds between last year when I went to Cactus Jack and this year at the Andre Dawson, I would say Cactus Jack still has a bigger fan base, crowd base. Both Friday and we were talking about it in the group chat. Friday nights are still a little like the Friday games. They start games Friday at 9 a.m. That's tough. That's tough. By Friday night, the crowd starts to get in. The Saturday games were more crowded. And then I will say probably the biggest difference crowd-wise is that the Sunday games in Florida, they played a 9 a.m., a 10 a.m., I think a noon and a 3 o'clock. The Sunday games were more crowded than the Sunday games in Houston. Right? Like, because I think for whatever reason, maybe like I said, because of the weather, it's outside, it's a Sunday, it just kind of felt like less, and I'd also say probably less people traveled. So more people from like the Florida region probably populated that Sunday. Saturday night's the big night, but that Sunday I think also had a real familiar feel, like a real home feel to it. And I would, that was interesting. Fridays were tough, but
Yes.
I think you saw things, especially crowd wise. You saw things on Saturday and Saturday night, and some of the teams travel better than others.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think the good crowds. I would say probably overall slightly bigger in Houston. But also I think one of the biggest things is Houston's in a major league ballpark. The Jackie Robinson complex, even home and field at Jackie Robinson complex, is maybe a mid-sized spring training type situation. You know what I mean? There's less seats, just less seats. And so it doesn't it feels much more like a college baseball game than putting them in this major league stadium. Even if you had a good crowd, I bet you the Vero Beach crowd would have looked even smaller, right? In this major league stadium with all of these seats. So I enjoy that aspect of it being a little bit more feeling more intimate like a spring training setting, because it allowed you to really be on top and into the game. And home and field, I would still say, considering the big schools in the SEC and big schools in the ACC, that's a small college stadium, right? That's a mid-sized college stadium.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I would say if I could comment on the Houston crowd on Sundays, we're pretty distracted on Sundays. I don't know if you know about Sunday Fun Day. People are too busy, going down the Mimosa Tower route. And so that's probably why there was maybe a smaller crowd at the HBCU Cactus Jack Classic on a Sunday, as compared to Florida, kind of in rural Florida. But I that's actually really interesting. I love to travel and actually see, get some interviews, from the parents at that, because they had a little bit more time to get their feet wet at the HBCU Classic, playing with against each other, and maybe they maybe had some sharper play. Maybe the weather was a little bit better. But I'm curious to see what the difference in play is.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, it's early in the season. And so I think all the coaches were preaching the same thing, that they got to clean up. All the coaches were saying they got to clean up play. And so they got to clean up play and execute was kind of the theme that went through that. One of the things that I thought was interesting, though, was that Grambling played that 15-14 game at the Cactus Jack against Alabama A&M. It was Alabama A&M's first win. And in turn, it actually cost Grambling the trophy for Cactus Jack, because they went from being 2-0 to 2-1. And if they had won that game, they would have probably won kind of the tournament per se. So then weekend later, Grambling plays Alabama A&M again. Now Grambling wins this game. It was a close game. I think it might have been a 1-run game. But Grambling wins this game. And I talked to Coach Pierre after the game, and I said, you guys play the same team again, and then you got to go and turn around and play them in the conference in 2 weeks. So by the time it's all said and done, before the SWAC conference tournament, Grambling's gonna play Alabama A&M 5 times. And I was like, does that really matter? And he was like, no, you want to just strap them up and play, and you're gonna play the team that's in front of you to the best of your ability, which is a great coach's line, and Coach Pierre is one of the best in the business. But I was like, man, I just thought about that. You're playing a team 5 times before you even have the opportunity to possibly play them again in the end of the year conference tournament. And there's a lot of teams that are like that now. And there are a lot of teams that played in the Cactus Jack, played in the Andre Dawson, and then they still have a 3-game series somewhere down the line. So
now I will say too, on Sundays, in Texas, they take church seriously. So that 9:00 a.m. or even at 11:00 a.m. service, because the younger crowd goes to the late service. They were not making it to a baseball park until later on in the day.
Sure.
And that is something that that just wasn't happening. But I was also looking and comparing some of the players who performed well. I saw Taj Bates.
Yep.
From Southern. He did really well. And of course, Trey Rutledge, who's like one of my favorite SWAC players
Yep.
of Alabama A&M. He also did really, really well during that tournament as well. So
I think all the scouts, the kind of the player of the tournament was Cruz out of Alabama State. And
yes.
he's the reigning SWAC freshman of the year. And I mean, he's just a massive kid, hits the ball a ton. And there were a lot of scouts there. There were like 5 or 6 scouts at most of the days. And a couple of the scouts I know is like kind of bigger time scouts that were there as well, which is interesting to see given kind of everything we're talking about scouting and development and drafting. But the scouts came out, and I think Cruz was the guy that a lot of those, and rightfully so, he played well.
Right.
I think he would wind up being the kind of the baseball prospects, minority prospects MVP of the entire event. But he really showed out, and the other guys there's like you said, quite a few players that are you're starting to identify early on in the season as players that can be those guys that are at the end of the year on the all conference team, and they showed out again. The interesting thing about this particular tournament, which I do think is different from Cactus Jack, is Cactus Jack was all HBCUs. The fact that Carrick Jackson bought an SEC team to Vero Beach to play the other 7 SWAC teams, if you will, they did go into that tournament with a target on their back. Everybody wanted to beat Missouri, and obviously Coach Jackson cares deeply about what the Andre Dawson Classic is. Cares deeply about obviously, taking his program to be in these types of tournaments. He wants to play well, but he also knows that he represents a big conference, So he's got, everybody wanted to beat them. They wanted to perform well, and they were in, I think, 2, one really tight game against Florida A&M, one, lopsided loss against Alabama State, and then I think a pretty handily win. But I know he's not coming out of these 3 games feeling like as good as the team wants him to feel, right? And so I think that was an interesting storyline and a subplot to the Andre Dawson Classic was the fact that Missouri, and all credit to Missouri, because he knew what he was getting into. He knew those teams were going to be good teams, but I also he's got to get his kids right, and so that was an interesting part of it.
So 2 other things for me. One, I did not understand the scheduling because Southern played the late game that Saturday night where they won 17-1, and then they turned back around and they played the early game. I think I mentioned that to y'all. That was one thing. The other thing was I know that last year for the Texas Classic, LSU and Texas, they played each other that Friday night for the big premiere game, but they didn't do it this year. This year, the Texas Classic has different teams. And I was wondering if that's because they're also in the same conference now. So when you mentioned that they played, similar teams within conferences, I do wonder if that's something next year that they will consider to be able to get different eyes, different perspectives for both the players and the teams moving forward. I mean, and I also know that there's a lot of tradition that goes into the Cactus Jack and the Andre Dawson Classic. So this isn't to diminish that.
Yeah, no, I don't know, because the interesting thing about both of those preseason tournaments too, even though they're playing in conference and conference teams, they do not count as conference games.
Oh, okay.
So the Cactus Jack results and the Andre Dawson results do not count in the standings.
Okay.
So, but I mean, here's the thing. As we close this part out, I will tell you, it was an amazing experience.
Yes.
Seeing, again, not just seeing the games and being there and everything that MLB Network, MLB Development, MLB staff, shout out to Abby, Alexandria, everybody that worked on the event was absolutely phenomenal. Also, just being there and seeing all of the work that MLB develops and Tony Regan's and that team has done to improve Dogertawn. Dogertown is there's a handful of things when you tour Dogertown that are as historic as they're expected to be, and a lot of pictures and this used to be here type thing. But the fact of the matter is, MLB took over Vero Beach and made it the Jackie Robinson Development Complex,
Right.
and it's a year-round facility where they do massive training and events and conferences and all kinds of stuff with all this history around it. But they've done a phenomenal job. Hats off to them. And if you haven't been, I would say so. Now both of you, obviously, last 2 years have been to the Cactus Jack. I would pull the I would pull the cheats and say, okay, I went to Cactus Jack the last 2 years. I got to see what Vero looks like. I got to see what the Andre Dawson Classic looks like.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I want to be at Cactus Jack again next year too. So I don't mind going to both if we're being completely honest. And y'all already know I got to visit the Dodgers
back to back.
Dodger part. So
yeah, it's tough. All right, last thing we're going to talk about before we get out of here on this podcast is the big media news. Flobo, you're my media guy in many ways. MLB, the way that it's reported is MLB decided to opt out of working kind of their current contract with ESPN for the rest after the end of this season. Mm-hmm. Apparently, what I read was they had at least 3 years left, basically a 3-year option. Mm-hmm. MLB decided that they are going to opt out after this year. Doesn't mean that they're not going to figure it out or reunite, but after this year, they are kind of free agents, if you will. Everything that I've read as well says Commissioner Manfred did this because he is not happy with baseball coverage from ESPN outside of just putting on the games. So ESPN has the contracts for some of the games. I'm under the impression that wasn't how they cover the games wasn't really an issue, but the fact that ESPN, is really gone into football year round, they've really gone into basketball year round, and there's not a lot of room for them to talk about baseball. I guess the first question I'd have, Flobo, are you surprised that this happened? It seems to be bigger news than I thought it would be.
Yeah. I'm surprised it happened this early, but I'm not surprised about the result, right? So, if anyone's been paid twice a month will know, on payday, you on steak. And the day before you get paid, you on spam. And that's what ESPN basically was over the past couple of years. They can't compete, get the big four sports packages with Apple, with Amazon, with those huge players. And so you're seeing them, and this is kind of cynical, so I apologize for those listening, as ESPN shift their sports coverage to more semi-pro, new leagues, women's sports, cheaper properties to keep the appearance of having a sports package alongside with their pivoting of giving their personality-based platform, Pat McAfee, Stephen A. So you are Rob Manfred. You have this sport where week by week and season by season, you're getting more and more teams individual broadcast rights. You look at the MLS soccer and they have the entire 30-game slate on Apple. You're going, I want some of that money. ESPN, you are an albatross to what I need to do to make sure we get a bona fide revenue stream. So I'm surprised that it happened so soon, but I would have had to predict something. I thought they would have gone to the end of this deal and not renew. And to be fair, if you look at the Formula One side, ESPN is doing that as well. Their Formula One coverage has been pared down to just the race. Makes me think that they're kind of in financial straits.
Even else? I mean, you talked about those, the tennis coverage has also diminished immensely. That's more of an NBC Peacock thing. But for me, I'm always looking and I'm like, okay, so when we gonna get the coverage? And I remember being shocked whenever they were covering the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes because baseball does not get any kind of coverage like that. And so when the Yankees Dodgers thing came on, they tried to cover that because it was a big deal. But for the most part, they do not cover sports. They do not cover baseball like talking about. We don't have baseball tonight anymore. I don't know about y'all, but I miss baseball tonight. And for true baseball fans, I think it also hurts the fact that you don't have experienced people who know the game and love the game talking about it. A lot of them are talking as fans in, no disrespect to anybody. They're talking like fans in a chat that, you know, you watch periodically from time to time. You're a casual fan, and that's what it came across as. So sometimes I'll be watching it and I'm like, that's not even the case. Like, why would you say that as an analyst on a public TV show? So for Rob Manfred, whether you like him or dislike him, I thought that it was a W move, as my students would say. I thought it was a W move to actually progress the game forward. And I don't know if y'all have ever watched, I mean, I'm sure y'all have, but the Apple streaming, the viewing is A1. Like, I mean,
technically at some point. Technically at some point. Commentary.
Yeah, commentary, but the screen, I mean, you can put that on mute. The screen, like, it is crisp. So I'm very interested to see exactly how they negotiate it. And if they do happen to keep it on the network, I just want them to be a little bit more progressive in how they approach baseball, because there are things that have changed. And if we want to grow baseball, then we need the appropriate people in place in order for that to happen.
What do you think, Malik?
I don't know. A part of me feels like Rob is kind of overplaying his hand a little bit. And the reason being is because I don't know. I think about it. This deal that he currently had with ESPN was worth $550, and that was a downgrade from the deal that they actually won. It was in the $700 million deal with ESPN. I don't know how you go higher than what they've been getting from them. And you mentioned Apple. I think that's only a $10 million deal. Of course, Amazon is starting to stream MLB games. I know it's not touching the same amount of money that ESPN was touching with MLB. And they're probably just going to have to go the route of some of these other sports networks and just start spreading out to a whole network of different streaming avenues. You even see the NFL, touching base with Netflix now, which is something I never thought I would see. And so I think that it's kind of a power move, but at the same time, the fact that, the deal that stands is already a downgrade from the one that they wanted, it just kind of makes me curious. And I'm not trying to be like, a lover of ESPN. I agree with everything that we're all saying. It seems like when I'm watching ESPN baseball coverage, it's just like watching, a bunch of fans at a bar talk. But I'm just curious, like, how are they going to kind of make up that $550 million that, that's not going to be there with ESPN? Who knows? They might renegotiate, but it just seems like they don't have the biggest leverage here.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm there's part of me, like you said, that I enjoy Sunday Night Baseball. I do. I enjoy ESPN's coverage. Actually, the one they do it covered. I think the issue was, like you said, when it's not on TV for them, if it's not like showing a game, or even like Sunday night going into a game, going into Sunday Night Baseball, all of the stuff that ESPN has invested in, and Plebo, you mentioned it as well, they've invested in a lot of the kind of talking head shows. A lot of their highest paid people are the personalities that talk on Get Up and First Take and Pat McAfee. And those guys those shows don't invest very much in baseball. So it's hard to get that momentum and that buzz around it. So whatever new deal they strike, whether it's, going to the Turners or going to Amazon, going to streaming, they've got to figure out how to get more baseball conversations, more baseball coverage, more baseball, into the everyday kind of conversation of their coverage. And so I think all things have kind of a time period, and they're cyclical. Like NBC's now getting the NBA back. You know what I mean? Like so I mean it's not kind of so gone forever per se, but I just think the mentality from a baseball fan, the mentality that the way that ESPN approached kind of talking about the game when the game's not on is really where they could have improved. Like they could have had, figured out more ways to, and again, it's difficult because NFL sells, NBA sells.
Yeah.
So ESPN's looking at it like, your baseball tonight, if it's baseball in the afternoon or whatever that show is, that's going to be a ratings drop. That's not PTI. That's not around the horn. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I think that's the challenge. But it's also a real shift in the way like generations consume sports in general. Like again, the biggest show when I was a kid growing up was SportsCenter. SportsCenter is not the biggest show anymore. Like, kids have SportsCenter on their phone every day.
Right.
They're not gonna talk about Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann or you know what I mean, or even the
These kids.
They're not gonna. They don't know the anchor. The anchors used to be the biggest thing.
Right.
Who your SportsCenter anchors were, and they don't really know that.
Right.
You know that world. So it's like, I did like though. Was it last year or 2 years ago when they came up with like, the Michael K simulcast when it was like K-Rod.
Right. Michael K.
I thought some of those things were good. They weren't. It wasn't the Manning cast, but I thought the K-Rod cast was pretty good, only because of like awkward moments, like when they bought Jeter on the K-Rod thing, and I thought they were going to fight each other.
Well, if you want my opinion, I think that we should having a lot more simulcast, especially if you have like some anchors from our culture to really give us our perspective on the game.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking where media is trending, because you're right. Gen Alpha consumes games in chunks. Like anything that you grew up literally from SportsCenter to NewsHour to Jimmy Fallon all has to be cut up, because no one's going to sit an hour or 2 hours before it. So if you're ESPN and you're Sunday night and you're calling every other week, hey, we got to flex your game, move that game to this. We got to put this team here in this spot.
Yeah.
Your MLB going, what am I getting out of it? ESPN is not giving what I want. Netflix can give me a game and a docu-series and a reality show and a game based on that. Like, it's just a no-brainer.
And I saw a point today on Threads where someone made a comment that one of the reasons they were happy for this dissolution to occur was because they didn't really broadcast all the teams. So they only broadcasted teams like Yankees and Mets and Dodgers and Braves, so the top teams. And they felt that this would be a way where maybe coverage of all of the teams would possibly happen on another network. So I don't know, but I did see that. I saw that quite a few times today.
I'm not trying to see it.
I don't mind
the
Dodgers 50 million times. But
I'm trying to see a Rockies Marlins Sunday night baseball game. I'm not trying to see it.
Yeah, why you hating on the Rockies, bro?
Hey,
nobody.
Come on.
That $4 tickets, cheats. Come on.
Now, well, how about this then? I'm not trying to see an Angels White Sox.
I'm trying to see that game. Come on, Fred, we're gonna watch it.
If it's Sunday night baseball meant something. John Miller, Joe Morgan.
Yes.
Sunday night baseball. I want the marquee matchups.
You're just showing your age. That event television, that doesn't exist no more. I want to watch my team when I want to. Click.
And you can. You absolutely can. All right. This has been great. We're over an hour and a half, but I knew we had a lot to get covered today. Really, really excited about this season as we go through. Are you guys getting ready for your prediction shows? Because it's coming.
Yes. I'm ready to be canceled and all of that.
Too many tabs open, Chief.
Too many tabs open. Well, look, this podcast, for those of you who are listening, please subscribe to the Black Baseball Mixtape Podcast. It will be up tomorrow. In the Booth is there now. Make sure it's a separate link, so make sure you subscribe to In the Booth Podcast. April, what is the countdown on 10th Inning Talk?
Yeah, what's up?
Every week we have a countdown for April's podcast.
My companion show me a companion.
It's coming, y'all. Look, I randomly got on Black Baseball Media. I was cooking, and they were like, "Come on!" And they were like, "When is your podcast coming?" And I'm like, "Okay, y'all, it's coming. I promise, it's coming. Fingers crossed." But we will have a countdown, an official countdown. How about next week? An official countdown. We can all count down together.
We'll let it go. The Dodgers will have probably played 6 regular season games by then, because for whatever reason, they decided to put like the Dodgers regular season games in like week 3 of spring training, and then then they go back to spring training and
again.
So I
they
think
did that last year too.
Yeah, last year too.
It's the series, was it Japan series this year?
This year.
Yeah. It'll be like a week before spring training. Okay. So we're going to finish this episode off. Again, thanks to all of our sponsors. If you want to join, today is the first day we're announcing this. If you want to join the Black Baseball Mixtape Fantasy Baseball League this year, send me a note, message Black Baseball Mixtape. We will send you the Discord link. You will have to join through our Discord. We're very excited about it. Commissioner said is working hard. I think Troy Justice has made the logo. It's all happening. It's all happening. Steelo Sports, Players Alliance, Numbers Game Scorecards, Rebellion Harvest, Minority Prospects. Thank you. Make sure you check all of them out. Until next time, we'll be back next